I'm Billy Hollowell, and welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we bring you interviews with pastors, actors, entertainers, and other notable news figures. On today's show, we're going to be getting into some fascinating topics, but before we do, if you are not subscribing to Newsmakers, make sure you head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe right now. Give us a rating. We love 5-star reviews. This is a show where you're going to dive deep into important issues with amazing people. With no further ado, here is today's show. On today's Newsmakers, we're telling an incredible story. It is a healing miracle. The man's name is Christopher Gunderson, and he spent the first 16 years of his life unable to eat and in desperate need of medical intervention just for survival. Now, we're going to get into his story today, but this is actually a story that is mentioned briefly in our documentary, Investigating the Supernatural Miracles. This is a documentary where I go across the country sharing radical stories of miracles, healing miracles that we dive deep into from an investigative journalist perspective, unpacking them and allowing you to make a decision about what you think actually unfolded and whether or not you believe God was at work. Christopher Gunderson's story is absolutely incredible. With no further ado, let's hear him tell it. Chris, it is great to connect with you. I've got to tell you, there's so many interesting connections between you and your story that we're about to get into, and Investigating the Supernatural Miracles, which is our new documentary at CBN. In fact, your story is briefly told as a case study in the documentary, and I hadn't even connected the dots until after, and I won't even get into all the connections. We were just talking about them off camera, but really, really, really cool to get a chance to talk with you about this story that people will hear about in the film. Let's kind of go back. You as a baby were diagnosed with a very serious digestive issue. Let's just start there. Tell us a little bit about that and how it impacted your life.
So I was born with a syndrome called chronic pseudo-obstruction syndrome, and it was a congenital defect. So I was born with it. Basically, where my stomach was completely paralyzed. They call it complete gastroparesis, and it wouldn't pump anything from my stomach to my small intestine. So everything I ate for when I was a child, um, for for actually for when I was an infant would just projectile vomit and just vomit everything up. And so I wasn't able to actually get any kind of nutrition for a long period of time. It took my parents and the doctors several studies and diagnostic tests to figure out that that was truly the case, that I had complete gastroparesis.
So this starts when you're born with it. So it starts when you're a baby, and obviously, babies are not eating solid food right away, but this issue did not go away for you. So you were not able to eat solid food at all, correct? I mean, at all until you were a teenager, which we'll get into.
No, yeah. I was really only able to eat food just to have for the taste and the socialization, but I wasn't able to digest it. So I'd either spit it out and just have it for taste, or I would have it be drained out through another tube into my stomach. I had two tubes. One was connected to my stomach to be able to decompress everything, stomach acids, saliva that I would swallow, as well as a little bit of food that would swallow that would be able to get through a very small hole in my stomach. And then I would have another tube connected to my small intestine, that was where I was getting the nutrition from, the formula.
How okay, I mean, this is wild to me because obviously eating and drinking are things people take for granted every single day. They're things we have to do to survive. They're things you have to do very literally to live. You were unable to do these things. So what was your typical form of nourishment? Just, you mentioned the tubes, just so people understand. It sounds like you were being fed through tubes then.
So as early as for as early as I can remember, I'd always have a large dose of formula through my feeding tube during the night, and then just a little bit during the day. As I got older, the requirements were more, and as I played sports and everything, I had to have more nutrition. It was just a lot more difficult to get that because it was a slow drip process. You can't flush the small intestine with a large dose or a large bolus of anything because it's too intense for it to actually take on. So it's like literally a drip, drip, drip to be able to get that nutrition in. And
Wow.
so where people were able to consume large amounts of food in a short amount of time to be able to get that energy and the calories that they needed. For me, it took hours on end to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. So this goes on. How did this affect you? Not just physically, and let's start there, but also mentally, socially, spiritually. I mean, this seems like a massive deal that would really append anybody's life.
You know, the blessing in disguise was that I was born with it, so I didn't really know any different aside from what I could see from my peers and my siblings. But it was my normal. But still, given that, there was definitely its challenges and its hurdles that I had to overcome. Every day, I would have bile actually back up into my stomach and cause severe heartburn on like a daily basis. And so I'd have to constantly drain that out throughout the night and throughout the day. Trying to go on any trip was almost nearly impossible because I literally had to carry all of my nutrition with me anywhere I went. And then just, I think the most difficult part with being a very active child was just to keep up with the energy level that I had expanded all the time. And so there was a scenario all the time during PE class back in grade school where I would get dizzy. And so my PE teacher would have me lay on the ground and put my feet up to be able to help with that. But I felt like I could never actually keep up with the amount of energy that I was expending. So it made it where I'd get tired and fatigued and actually almost pass out multiple times.
Well, especially because, obviously, if you're not getting enough nutrition to begin with, now you're working out, you're sweating, now you need more nutrition, right? To burn off. You need more of
Exactly.
those like
Exactly.
that. I mean, would it have been easy for you? And this may seem like a silly question. Obviously, having a huge burger or a huge meal wasn't going to happen for you. It couldn't
Mhm.
happen. You'd either throw up or it would have to be drained. But if you were to drink a Gatorade, let's say, were you able to do that? Like, how did it work with getting the liquids into your body?
So the only way that I'd actually get the benefit from it was through my uh jejunostomy tube, my J tube, also the tube connected to my small intestine. There was no beneficial factor at all for me actually physically drinking it, aside from just quenching my thirst. When the fluid actually hits your tongue, it will quench your sorry, I'm stuttering here. It will quench your thirst for a short amount of time, but then it will come back. So I would still drink things by mouth just to quench that thirst. It's the normal human thing to do and actually helped me and felt good. But then to actually get the beneficial factor, I'd have to pump it with a syringe through my feeding tube.
Wow. So, okay. So, how serious was this outside of the seriousness of having to have your entire life really be centered around eating and being nourished, right? Because even taking trips you said was hard. How serious was this medically over time? Could this have developed into something that threatened your life even, especially as you were getting older?
My parents were told multiple times that the doctors didn't know how long I was going to live for. They never exposed that to me, which I'm grateful for. I don't really think that's necessary to tell your child that they don't know how long that they're going to live. When I would get sick, they would actually keep me on the chunkier side because when I got sick, I actually lost a lot of weight to the point where it was dangerous. So I was always kind of kept more on the chunkier side. Um, and there was multiple times where I got infections around the insertion site of the feeding tube. I got septic a lot too, where the infection would go not just from the feeding tube, but throughout my whole entire body. And there was multiple times, especially when I was really little, that I would end up back in the ER, back in the hospital, and there for not just days but weeks on end.
I mean, so this was a very I would imagine even though it was your normal, this is a very traumatic experience. Your normal was not easy. Your normal was difficult. It was
Yeah.
potentially life threatening. Thankfully, you didn't realize that as a young person. So I mean, you're going through this whole experience, and one of the things it really struck me because when in the documentary, as people will see, and if people are interested in the documentary, they can go to cbn.com/supernatural. But when we talk about your case, I was asking, which cases are really compelling, and he's giving me the details, and I'm asking questions, trying to really poke holes, sort of understand, is there something else we're not hearing? And there was nothing. I mean, it was really a shocking case to hear, because I had not encountered a lot of cases like this. Now,
Mhm.
at some point, were you guys Christians your whole life? Did you grow up in a Christian household? What, I'm curious, your faith journey.
My parents grew up themselves as Catholic, and then they switched to Christianity shortly after they had us. We were always non-denominational. We always went to a non-denominational church. Me personally, and later hearing from my parents that we believed, I forgot what the term was called, but believed that healings had ceased, um, current day, present day. There's a word for it, but I can't think of it right
So are
now.
you thinking of cessationism? Is that where
Yes,
you think?
yes,
Yes.
yes,
So you
yes.
guys, I want to pause. So you guys actually believed while you were sick during this time that healings had ceased. That was not something that was part of your framework, your faith framework.
Correct. I thought it was
Okay.
more so like we pray to God for like an illness, like a cold, but there wasn't something like supernatural that would happen. It would maybe like help the healing process, but never actually like a hand of God being sick one moment and totally fine the next.
So, okay, and this is what makes I didn't know that detail about you and your family. So that's what makes this story even more wild. So at some point, you guys decide to go to an event where there are healing prayers being uttered, right? I mean, you decide,
Mhm.
what was it that caused your family, even though you didn't necessarily believe this was something that could happen, to go to that event?
So Bruce Venata, this was back in November of 2011, and Bruce Venata was at this benefit dinner for children in Honduras, and he was telling his testimony. My parents had attended, and my mom was hearing his testimony, and during the whole time that Bruce was talking, my mom was hearing God tell her to go talk to him. He was saying a lot of familiar medical terminology that most people wouldn't really know because of what Bruce had gone through and what I've gone through. And so when he was done telling his testimony, she kept on kind of pushing it off, like people are going to be talking to him and everything, and he's going to be too busy to want to hear from me. And God had made it where there was no one talking to him at the time, so she went up and talked to him and told him about me. I was actually currently home at the time. I wasn't there, but she had asked if he could pray for me, and he's like, "Where's he at?" Said that he was at home, didn't want to come here because he's a 16-year-old, not wanting to come to a benefit dinner. So he said that he was going to be talking at this church for the next day on Sunday, and why don't you bring your whole family there? And so she had come home with my dad and told me about it. And it wasn't really like I was in denial that it could happen, but there was some thing that kind of got to me when she was telling me about his story, his testimony, and I'm like, you know what? Sure, why not? I was actually really excited to like meet Bruce, hear his testimony, and like the more I like thought about it later on, the more I like came to realize that I was gonna get healed. And so
Wow.
we can kind of get on to the next day for if you want me to, or if you have
Yeah,
any other
no, I
questions
mean,
about that.
no, I do. I have a lot of questions. I mean, so you and I don't want to keep you too long, but I mean, there's just so much to this story. So you start to feel like you're going to get healed, and it's really, I mean, it's a big jump from I don't really know if I believe this could happen to, you know what, God's prompting us to not only be at this event and talk to this guy, but maybe I'm going to get healed. When you were feeling that, was that a spiritual feeling? Like you felt like God was delivering that message to you that the healing was going to come?
He had given me a little nudge that night, but especially when we were there at that church the next day, um, I had this pulsating sensation in my abdomen that I hadn't had before. And I was like, what's going on? And God said he's preparing me. And I haven't really ever heard from God too much before in my spirit. I didn't know how to really listen to his voice, listen to the Holy Spirit's voice. And so I was kind of having like this dialect with God. And he said that I'm preparing you and I'm working on you. And I told him back then I had a very severe stutter. Like I couldn't talk or anything. I had a terrible stammer. I had tics and everything that I was just trying to like force words out, just wouldn't flow or anything. So I told God for when I was 16, during that time that I was having that pulsating sensation, that I said, if you heal me, I will not be quiet about it. I'll tell anyone and everyone about this testimony, about this miracle that you did for me. And so now we're here.
Now we're here.
But
I mean,
yeah,
okay. So now, Bruce, did you ask Bruce? Because I've met Bruce, I was just with him, and
yeah,
he loves to hand out prayer. I mean, he loves to give prayer. Did you ask him, Bruce? Will you pray over me? Did he offer? Did you go to like? Just take us through how this happened, and just take us through the
yeah.
prayer and what unfolded, because it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So like I was saying, I was having that pulsating sensation during this whole testimony. I was talking to God, and then we as a family had gone up to Bruce, and we were kind of like comparing battle scars and everything because I have a huge cut down my abdomen, and so does he and everything. So just to kind of like say hello and whatnot. And then he put his hands on my shoulders, and my whole family stood in a circle around me, and he started to pray for me. And I started to feel that pulsating sensation that I was talking about before, but to like the 10th degree. It was just like very it feels like when you flex your abdomen, but just like over and over and over again. And then about halfway through the prayer, I actually felt this lightning bolt electric shock go from my right shoulder down through my chest and down through my abdomen. And I felt like God jump started my stomach back up with a shock. And it actually kind of bent me over, like it kind of doubled me over there. And Bruce had said, like, "Hey, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was pretty painful." And he said, "We need to continue." I'm like, "All right." And then I still felt that pulsating sensation while I was praying for me. And then we were done with prayer, and I was like, "Well, that was interesting." We walked out of the church, and we were like, my dad was like, "Well, how do you feel?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't really feel much different." Um, so we didn't really know what to think about it. And so I actually had a basketball game that night. And then after the basketball game, we went out for dinner. And I actually, what I would normally do if I was out with family and everything, just to socialize, would just be like to chew on the food and spit it kind of discreetly into a cup. No one really even noticed. But I ended up swallowing the whole meal. Didn't have any abdominal pain like I normally would, and then it processed through the very next day.
So, okay, all right. Now, this I just want to clarify. This was the first full meal that you had ever eaten at this point.
Correct. My small intestine had never had to take anything on aside from just formula. Nothing
So you
else.
and what and tell us again what the meal was, just so people understand what it was that you ate and
It
processed.
was so I really like Chinese food, so I had some Chinese food for my first meal. Probably not the best thing to try to test out, but I mean it was pretty tasty. So,
were
but
I
I
mean, were
had
you
no
panicked
abdominal
while you
pain or
were
anything.
were you a little scared while you were eating this food? I mean, like as you're doing it, because you've never really
I
done this
wasn't.
before.
I wasn't scared. I was more like filled with excitement and joy, and it felt like it was very surreal. Like it was very like this isn't really happening right now. And I actually had that for about 2 weeks there, Billy. Um, where I would actually still be on the tube feeds because I didn't really trust I was healed. I didn't want to actually put my full faith in the fact that like God actually healed me. So I was eating by mouth, swallowing, digesting the food completely while still using the tube feeds. And I knew where all the buttons were for my pump and everything to turn it on and off, even like with my eyes closed. So there was times where I would actually wake up in the middle of the night not knowing it, I was like sleepwalking or whatever, and I would turn it off. And so 2 weeks had gone by, and I woke up and I realized that I had a whole bag of formula that was not inside of me. And I actually felt hunger for the first time. So part of my condition was I never felt hunger before. I only felt thirst. So I didn't know what hunger
Wow.
felt like. And so I went downstairs and talked to my mom, and I was like, I had this like empty feeling in my stomach. Like it just feels weird. It feels empty. And she's like, yeah, Chris, that's hunger. I'm like,
That's
oh,
hunger. Yeah.
this is
Welcome to
terrible.
hunger. Well, yeah, this is not a fun feeling.
This is not fun.
Wow.
So I really think like either God turned it off or I turned it off, but he was like, are you gonna trust me? You know? And I was like, that was the moment that I stopped with the tube feeds. I was holding that on as some kind of clutch or whatever to be like, I don't want to fully believe it because if I do, it doesn't turn out to be the case, then I'm going to be let down even more so than I was before.
That's
And
terrifying. I
so,
mean, that's a
oh
terrifying
yeah,
prospect. But
yeah.
then that trust in God. Okay, so the biggest question I have now, you've had this healing. And here's the thing, for people who are skeptical of this, the fact that your stomach is moving, that this is all going on while you're being prayed over, even when you're listening to his testimony before that. And for those who don't know, Bruce's testimony is a whole other story. I mean, he should be dead. He was trapped under a massive truck. I won't even go into all the details. So, and he has been very involved in prayer and ministry for others, and obviously including yourself. But I want to come back to something. When this was all said and done and you had this healing, how did your doctors respond? These are doctors at this point, you're 16 years old, you're a teenager, they've treated you your whole life and they've told you, I imagine, that there's no way this will ever be healed. It's healed. How did they all react to it?
So we had made a doctor's appointment with my GI specialist, and about 2 weeks after I was completely off of the tube feeds. So I can go to her and say, hey, like I've been completely off of this for 2 weeks. Normally I should be dead by now because I haven't had any kind of nutrition through my feeding tubes. And so we went to her and we're talking to her and she was like, so what's this appointment for? Like, is everything okay? How are you feeling? And I don't remember the conversation verbatim, but it was something along the lines of like, I'm like totally healed now. I was prayed for. I've been off tube feeds for 2 weeks now, and I feel better than ever. And she was very skeptical. Sorry, excuse me, skeptical of the whole situation, but she was very happy. So her main thing that she kind of went back to was that I don't know how to explain it, but I'm really happy for you, Chris. I'm really, really happy for you. That's
Have
awesome.
any of them been able to explain this? Any of these doctors?
No, no. I don't
Um,
know. I don't remember if I went to my primary or if he had retired at that point. But in regards to her, that was the only appointment that we saw for her, aside from actually getting them removed and then stitched up. So I actually, when we went to that appointment, I was ready to get him taken out, get it all taken care of and everything, and to move on with life. And she was like, why don't we give it 6 months just to make sure everything is working properly? And me be my 16-year-old self and not being very patient. Like, are you kidding me? I gotta wait
I want this out
six
now.
months for this? Let's get this going. So I was prayed for in November. We waited till April of 2012, and I actually took him out while in the office because I knew how to like change them and everything. You need to change them out every so often. So I took them out. We waited a good, I think it was either until June or July to see if the holes would actually close on their own. But but it's similar to like an earring hole where if it's open for so long, it doesn't close. So they closed about halfway. And so I actually had to have my last surgery done to be able to like cut it back open and then stitch it back up to have it like seal properly.
Wow. Okay. Now, the big question, it's been a decade at least now. I mean, over a decade. Have you had any other issues since then, or have you been normally eating without any problems?
I have so at the start, I lost a lot of weight. I lost like 20 pounds because I realized being a 16-year-old boy, you have to eat constantly. At least for at least for my metabolism and for how active I was working out, I was playing a lot of basketball, I was snowboarding, so I was using up a lot of energy. So I realized that I need to eat constantly to be able to keep that weight up. But since then, I'm stronger than I ever have been before, which that could never even be a thing. My complexion is actually a lot healthier than what it was. I was actually a lot more pale beforehand. Um, my mental clarity is actually a lot sharper than what it was prior. Um, and definitely finding a lot more enjoyment and just being able to eat and socialize and honestly, like not feeling like an outcast, because I always felt like an outcast, especially when it came to socialization with food, because I didn't really know how to hold myself. I didn't know if like should I taste food and spit it out. I was always embarrassed if someone saw my spit cup that I had, and so I didn't know what I was missing out on until I was healed, and now I would never want to go back.
Okay, final question for you, because the story is incredible. What how did this, not what, but how did this change your view of God, and where are you now today with him because of it?
Before my tubes, I saw God as this higher being that's just kind of up there and not really having a deep, meaningful relationship with us. And now I actually have this inner dialect with him on, I would say, not a daily basis, because I'm not a perfect person. I'm not always in prayer on a daily basis. I try to, but I would at least say on a weekly basis, like I'm always reaching out to him, and I feel like it's this two-way conversation, and like it's made me a better person. I'm not perfect. I actually fell into some sin shortly afterwards, doing stupid stuff, and so um if you sin or whatever, your healing's not going to be taken away. I actually was told by one of my teachers that my healing was going to be taken away because I had sinned or I should be careful or something like that. I'm like, you know what? When God does something, he does it. And it's for you to be a blessing to others for and to have that testimony for as well. But it made me also realize that like it's okay to fall short because we all fall short of the glory of God, and just to keep trying because it's a continuous relationship and a continuous walk with him.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, taking us through all this. It's an incredible testimony. People can see us to actually talk about it and break it down in the documentary. And I'm just grateful that you came on and spoke with us. Would love to have you back again and appreciate your time
Yeah,
today.
definitely. Thank you much, Billy.
I got out of my patrol car and I slipped.
I went from having a promising career as a neuroscientist to having a medical death sentence.
I said there was nothing else that we could do. There was no heartbeat.
Time of death, 8:05.
Are miracles real? Do they happen today? Let's investigate.
A lot of skeptics will say, well, miracles are impossible. Why? Because they violate the laws of nature. You can't violate the laws of nature.
People would pray for me, and sometimes it felt like this power that just zapped me.
When I woke up, she says, "Can you do anything that you didn't do before?" I looked at my hand that was clutched. I said, "Hand, move."
He's dead. It's over. I said, shock him one more time.
Well, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. Let's look at the evidence.
That's all for today's Newsmakers. Thank you so much for tuning in. And be sure to head on over and check out the new documentary investigating the supernatural miracles. You can find that at cbn.com/supernatural. We dive into some incredible miracles, investigating whether they still happen today and what is unfolding in various scenarios across America. Again, it is cbn.com/supernatural. And tune in for the next episode of Newsmakers. We'll see you later.